Greetings YouTube, this is Remarkable Republican, here once again to bring you the truth with truth-flavored bias. In the past, I've looked at the homosexual agendas present in Yakuza 0, Yakuza 1, and Yakuza 2. Today we talk about Yakuza 3. Unlike its two predecessor games, it does not have the secondary title of Kiwami. That's kind of odd, I don't know why they decided to drop that, but who knows. One other thing that they dropped is any degree of subtlety about the game's homosexual agenda. Sega, the maker of the game, clearly has a homosexual agenda in the game. And while I believe that this is very much present in the other games and that I've proven that beyond any shadow of a doubt, in this game things are really cranked up to 10 and there is absolutely no subtlety or shame about it. So let's go through this game and look at all of the assorted gayness. After having seen so many blatant examples of the commune queer agenda being shoved down our throats in media, it's pretty rare that I'm truly stunned by the boldness of these people. But Sega really went the extra mile in Yakuza 3 because the game literally begins, more or less, with a gay sex scene. So, the first playable scene that is not in the graveyard occurs on the roof of the Millennium Tower. You play as Kiryu and you fight Majima. As I've discussed in the past, Majima is all but an open homosexual, and Kiryu has said and done some suspicious things in the past. But this fight removes all doubt about the nature of their relationship. They have a brawl where, as men who are alone and supposedly friends, they find the need to take off their shirts and roll around together. At the end, the two of them are sitting near the ledge, out of breath, smoking cigarettes, an action that is typically reserved for couples after they've had sex. The two are also not very far apart in that scene. It is one of the more explicit sex scenes in the entire series. There are other games where you can actually seduce these waitress women and have sex with them, and a lot of those are actually more subtle about what has happened than this is. So effectively, what happened is they had breakup sex, because Kiryu's leaving for Okinawa, and Majima's not happy about it. That's why he wanted to fight him, and Kiryu won the fight. Majima was just happy to have his man lay his hands on him once again. It's one of those things where it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. This was a gay sex scene. All of this also occurred within minutes of Kiryu and his girlfriend from Yakuza 2 Kiwami, named Kaoru Sayama, breaking up. And the breakup had no emotion to it. She basically just said, "I'm going for special training, I'll miss you." And he said, "I will miss you too. Hopefully we'll see each other again." But then, when he sees Majima, the two of them take their shirts off and go to town on each other. That's where the passion was for Kiryu. So, a lot of everything that I've said about the previous games just got confirmed completely. Because that is exactly what it was. That's exactly what was going on the whole time. I was right all along. We know that Majima and Kiryu are officially broken up, and they stay broken up after their breakup sex because afterwards the interactions that the two have are limited, and also they're very cordial, but, they're not really all that warm. So it's clear that both of them have moved on, but maybe, especially for Majima, there are still a few feelings left unresolved. But Kiryu, the story focuses mostly on him, and we know that he moves on in Okinawa and meets a new boyfriend, Rikiya Shimabukuro, who is the captain of the Ryudo family. He challenges Kiryu to a street battle, loses, and then declares that Kiryu is his Aniki. Now, some people can be tricked by this because Aniki can mean a couple of different things. One is just like a bro, like your best friend. But how could he be best friends? I mean, they don't go back. Kiryu's probably 10 or more years older, and they've just met. So how can they be Anikis? Well, they really can't. But in the other sense of Aniki, which is boyfriend, they can totally be a new thing. People often date soon after they meet. And perhaps because of the symbolism of, a quote fight between Kiryu and Majima when they were on the rooftop, maybe the fight between Rikiya and Kiryu was a similar thing, although it was not straight up sex in that case because they were in a public place and there was an audience, whereas Majima and Kiryu were alone. Although, of course, the information broker would have had front row seats to that event. And imagine watching a couple of your friends go at it in that way when they're both being secretly gay is really weird. But anyway, so Rikiya is looking for a man who's older, wiser, and can give him guidance as well as being a boyfriend. Up to this point, his mentor has been Shigeru Nakahara, who is this old fat guy who's the head of the Ryudo family, but he's not much of a fighter, and the Yakuza in Okinawa are something of a joke. So what Rikiya is looking for is someone who can be both a mentor and a boyfriend, and Kiryu is that guy, because Kiryu's a badass and he's a gay man. If you look at their dynamic, it's very clear that Kiryu is the Aniki in the traditional sense of being like the older brother, and also the Aniki in the sense of being a patient boyfriend. Because Rikiya always acts like an annoying sidekick and he nags a lot, like a bad girlfriend. But the two of them seem to get along, and Kiryu always has had something of an irritable personality where he doesn't really allow his affection to show. But he never gets rid of Rikiya, and he never really complains about him, so clearly he's happy with this relationship, and he's in no hurry to get rid of the guy. Maybe he's holding out for something a little better, but for the time being, he's happy enough with Rikiya. As for the other signs of Rikiya's gayness, he hangs out with his friend Mikio, who is just like this fat loser guy. He and Mikio and Kiryu all wear Hawaiian shirts, and they're the only characters to do so. Hawaiian shirts aren't really that intimidating, and they can be a little gay. As for Rikiya's choice of other accessories, we see that he made a couple of other questionable decisions. He drives a pink pickup truck. This is supposed to be a guy who's intimidating and a crime boss, but he wears Hawaiian shirts, hangs out with a fat guy, drives a pink truck, and he also has a yellow snake tattoo on his back. Now, we know all these Yakuza guys get the big tattoos on their backs that are supposed to be impressive, but Rikiya's is not that impressive. It's just a long yellow snake that is native to Okinawa, supposedly. But if we think about it, the symbolism here is obvious. It's a long yellow snake. The Japanese people are yellow-skinned. And Rikiya likes men. And he wants snake-like objects near his back. It is an advertisement of his penis and an invitation for other penises. That is what the yellow snake tattoo is. We also learned that he never got it finished. So that will be something that the two do in Kamurocho together. Why wouldn't he get it finished? Well, his tattoo artist must have figured out this guy is a homo, and then he, maybe he didn't like gay people and refused to finish the tattoo. So Rikiya had a snake tattoo with no eyes. But another reason to leave it eyeless, potentially, maybe he did it on purpose and he's actually being clever, is so that way you don't have to worry about it not being a one-eyed snake. So that way you have to think about it a little more. And then you realize, oh, it's a penis, and the yellowness of the penis means that it's Rikiya's penis, and also the penises that he wants inside of him. The two boyfriends discover that there is a plot to take away the land from Kiryu's orphanage and then give it to some developer. So Kiryu has to travel to Kamurocho to figure out what's going on, and he wants to go by himself. He knows the lay of the land, and he knows it will be dangerous. He also wants to keep Rikiya out of danger. But the thing about Rikiya is that this is a guy who is a Yakuza, and he also practices fighting, so he could be useful. And if this is just one of your buddies, and you know that he wants to get some experience, and that he's pretty good, you would take him with you. You already know where to go. All you got to do is have him there, and now you got backup. That's pretty cool. The only reason why Kiryu didn't want him there is because he didn't want his boyfriend to get hurt. And he also knew that because he was emotionally compromised with Rikiya, that if Rikiya gets taken captive, then he is vulnerable. Then he will have no choice but to show up and walk into an ambush. Interestingly enough, Kiryu eventually does allow Rikiya to come, but then when he goes out to meet with his ex-boyfriend Majima, he doesn't allow Rikiya to come to the meeting. Now, if Rikiya is helping you to figure things out now, wouldn't you want him to have all the information? Wouldn't you want him to understand the lay of the land, to meet some of the key players? But instead, he doesn't want his present boyfriend to meet his past boyfriend. That might create some jealousy, a lot of uncomfortable questions. Majima might also get jealous, and Majima is someone who has, a lot of temperamental issues, so he might challenge Rikiya to a fight for Kiryu's love or something like that. You never know. So, pretty wise decision on Kiryu's part, but it also reveals what is going on here. Kiryu then insists on being the one to pick the tattoo artist to finish Rikiya's snake tattoo, and he goes to the guy who did his ink back in the day. The reason for this is very simple. He wants to have control over who puts their hands on his man. A lot of that is just so they also will have this closeness, though, because both of them now have the same tattoo artist. And we know from previous games that tattoo artists really think they're putting their soul into someone's back. So for them to have some part of the same tattoo artist means that now they're even more bonded together. And because this tattoo is a tattoo of Rikiya's own penis, Kiryu wants to make sure that the quality of the art that goes into the snake eyes will be of the highest order, and so he picks his own personal artist to make sure that that's the case. So that way when he is with Rikiya, whether they're fighting guys or whether they're, doing other things in a couple-like fashion, this tattoo will only be of the highest quality. We also see that later on, just to skip ahead, hopefully no spoilers, Rikiya literally takes a bullet for Kiryu, and Kiryu has an excessively emotional reaction. Now remember, Kiryu is a fairly stoic guy normally. For the most part, he doesn't get too upset when Rikiya is whining and whining and whining about wanting to go to Tokyo. He doesn't get annoyed at the kids at his orphanage, even though a lot of them are fucking terrible. And he also didn't really get upset when his supposed girlfriend broke up with him. But when Rikiya, who's just this guy who is taking on all these dangers beside him, a companion, but someone who is a guy who knows the risk and is in that world, takes a bullet for him, rather than being grateful because now he'll be able to save his orphanage and get on with his life, Kiryu instead has this really emotional breakdown. And it only makes sense if he regards Rikiya as his lover. So, for him, this was a moment of loss, and it only makes sense if we understand that the two of them are lovers. Rikiya very much is the main love interest of Kiryu in this game, but there's another man that Kiryu clearly has a crush on, and that man is Joji Kazama. He's the younger brother of Shintaro Kazama, who was Kiryu's mentor and stepfather. Kiryu, of course, sees an image of Joji assassinating someone, and at first he thinks that his stepfather has come back from the dead, and he's starting to have sort of a breakdown because it's kind of like this impossible supernatural occurrence because he knows that Kazama is dead. But when he does meet Joji and then he finds out that he is a younger brother, happens to look just like Shintaro did, Kiryu starts to realize something about himself that he hadn't really thought through before. He's always had a strong latent attraction to his dead stepfather. And we can see that if we look at Yakuza 0. Because in that game, Kiryu tries his best to look like and imitate his stepfather. So he tries to get a suit that's not too fancy, unlike his friend Nishikayama, who is a fairly flaming homosexual. So Kiryu tries to imitate Shintaro in that sense. And we also have to remember that Kiryu has been living for the last few years in Okinawa, pretty low-key existence. His boyfriend is this annoying, kind of over-the-top, emotional guy with a dick tattoo. And then he meets Joji Kazama. And Joji is this really suave, good-looking older man who works with the CIA, so he's an international man of mystery. And he also has this sort of aura about him because he happens to look just like Kiryu's stepfather, a man he'd always had an attraction to. So you can definitely tell when Kiryu encounters Joji, he's looking for something, and he doesn't know exactly what. I doubt that if you could interview Kiryu, he would tell you that he's sexually into Joji Kazama, but it's pretty obvious that he is. And it's one of those things where everybody but Kiryu would probably be aware of it. So if you could ask his friends, they would be wise to it, but no one else would. So all of the main characters in the game, all of the protagonists, are all gay. But what about the bad guys? Well, it turns out that they're also all gay. Because what Sega is trying to do is show that the Yakuza are an organization which fundamentally revolves around homosexuality. Which I don't think is actually true in real life, but in the game world, all these guys are gay. And Yoshitaka Mine is no exception. He's the main bad guy here. He's the guy causing all of these events behind the scenes. There's also a CIA guy, but he's not that interesting and he doesn't really get a character. He's just sort of like this blonde American guy who is a loose cannon. But the guy really causing problems is Yoshitaka Mine. So he's an odd guy because he was a rich guy in his 30s who decided to become a Yakuza after he met Daigo Dojima. And it's very clear because the way he talks about Daigo Dojima that he very much admires him and is basically in love with him. And he claims that the reason why he joined, he made this life-changing decision which could have destroyed his career, made him lose his fortune, and exposed him to all kinds of danger he wasn't physically able to deal with. The reason why he did this is because he wants to know why men are drawn to Daigo. So this leaves two possibilities, and we never really learn which one. One is that he was obsessed with Daigo and wanted to be his man. The other is that he wanted to know how to get men the way that Daigo could. And over time, of course, he finds out that Daigo Dojima is not gay. Because actually Daigo Dojima is one of the few consistently heterosexual characters in the Yakuza universe. So he must have been heartbroken, so this causes Mine to betray Daigo Dojima. But even after he betrays him, he still has a lot of reservations about following through on that. And this is a pretty ruthless guy. Yet he can't bring himself to finish off Daigo Dojima because he's in love with him. And then later on he tries to do a mercy killing after Dojima survives and he finds him on life support because he can't bear to see such a great, noble, and in his opinion, handsome man die in such an undistinguished way. So there you go. This was the homosexual agenda at play in Yakuza 3. I played through 4 and most of 5 at this point, and up to this point it is still the gayest of the series. I will make videos on 4 and 5 in due time. At any rate, this has been Remarkable Republican, bringing the truth with truth-flavored bias. Signing out.